Ever since the 1930s, comics have postulated what a world with a Superman would look like. It is the definitive fantasy of the 21st century, where the mundane crosses paths with the extraordinary. In an age defined by the beginning of the space race, where every few years brought some new great technological development, it seems as if the age of super science from the industrialized new era would manifest these great scientific wonders in everyday life, where every boy and girl was just a gene splice, radioactive spider bite, or gamma radiation bath away from achieving the incredible. In an era where man stepped foot on the moon, music came out of thin air, and moving pictures would come out of a box, anything was possible. Of course, as the genre matured, it wasn't enough to just feature a guy who could fly and had super strength. Much like how the optimism from the end of World War II led into the malaise and the turmoil of the 1960s and the upheaval of the 1970s, superpowered heroes were no longer able to stand up as jingoistic tools of propaganda or childhood wonder. As times grew darker and more complex, so did the comics. Green Arrow and Green Lantern went on the road to rediscover the real America in the infamous Neil Adams hard-traveling hero storyline. Green Arrow's ward Speedy got addicted to heroin. The Dark Knight Returns transformed Batman into a fetishistic power fantasy of the male id and authoritarian fascism. Superhero narratives became darker and grimmer to reflect the new eras they were written in. Alan Moore redefined the genre through his work on The Watchmen and Miracle Man, and in this current era where superhero narratives have become great epoch centers of pop culture entertainment with no signs of stopping, it makes sense that Seth Rogen's adaptation of the cynical Garth Ennis comic The Boys would become such a massive hit. The Boys revels in the worst aspects of social media, celebrity culture, and societal strangulation through the monolithic megacorporations filtered through the prism of superheroes. Ironically brought to you by one of the greatest evil megacorporations of our time, the trillion-dollar piss bottle factory of Amazon. What makes Boys really stand out is its display of how terrifying living as a regular human in a superhuman society truly is for the unpowered. Humans can be eviscerated, lasered, or exploded at the drop of a dime, ending their existence in mere seconds. The advent of the superhuman is also the advent of an age of horrors, but on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, you have My Hero Academia. Tonally, it's a complete 180 from The Boys, and it also provides an interesting examination and counterpoint to what a superhuman society could look like. In a world where 80% of humans are all given X-Men-like mutations, a distinctive ability that has the potential to be extremely destructive, how can you maintain peace and order in a world where every child has the potential to level a city block or blow up a classroom? Two different series on opposite ends of the spectrum, but they both provide interesting answers on what does the superhuman society look like. Now join me as we take a look at My Hero Academia and The Boys, and how they reflect on both the wonderful and equally terrifying prospect of what a world where the Superman is real might mean for our world. You gotta love to be gone back yet. Don't you grab it. The world of X-Men postulates a reality where certain people begin the next step of human evolution thanks to the mutant gene, where they potentially gain fantastical powers as they march forward on the path of human evolution. Of course, this brings about a system of chaos as mutants become feared and persecuted due to the potential danger they represent towards the wider population. Of course, this leads to a civil rights allegory as mutants face potential persecution from the regular populace, as Magneto and Charles Xavier wage a perpetual war fighting for either acceptance or dominance. And as I'm sure many a comic nerd has told you again and again, served as the comic book allegorical representations of the philosophy of peaceful protest seen by Martin Luther King and the radical self-defense and resistance seen by Malcolm X. Of course, the allegory becomes a bit offensive when compared to the civil rights movement of the 1960s because, well, black people can't laser beam a classroom filled with children, but the mutant metaphor is one that has come to define many different fictional civil rights struggles and pulpy adventure stories seen in the X-Men comics. But what if this was reversed? What if instead of people being normal, only with a handful of gaining the mutant gene and respected powers, what if 80% of people were mutants? That is the world that is postulated by My Hero Academia. A new supernatural era where almost everyone is born with an incredible superpower mutation known as a quirk. And in this chaotic new supernatural age, the one dream profession of many boys and girls becomes a reality. In the superhuman society, the need of the superhero is more important than ever before. While in the world of My Hero, there are still regular police officers, they aren't always equipped to deal with crazy, gigantic humans or weird razor blade men. Sure, they have quirks, but their quirks might not be particularly very useful. A hero is basically a licensed professional who's given the permission by the government to use their quirk to subdue another empowered individual who's using their quirk to physically assault a person or property. Or they are authorized to use their quirk for designated disaster relief. That's the interesting thing about how the superhuman society is handled in My Hero Academia. It's the bureaucratic red tape that's put in line to keep things stable. When a child develops their quirk around age 4, they're usually put into quirk counseling where they're taught to suppress and not use their quirk to assault or harm others. The idea is that those who have the official license to use their quirks can also bear the legal responsibility of what happens when they use their superpowers in the field after extensive training. A great example of this is in the gentle criminal's backstory, where we see him try to intercede on a hero incident, but ultimately without the proper training he only manages to make the situation worse, and faces dire legal consequences for causing injury and using his quirk without a license. When everyone's super, then you gotta make sure you got the proper paperwork and a license to operate before you go ahead and help someone. Which of course is what makes a villain in the world of My Hero Academia. Villains aren't necessarily bad guys, but they are people who are not licensed to use their quirks and wield them freely, often for their own gain or at the harm or expense of others. It's kind of weird how the My Hero universe is almost like an Ayn Randian dystopia, but not like the ever-popular BioShock where the whims of the unchecked capitalism leads to drug addicts prowling an underwater super city looking for superpowered drugs to give them their next hit. But rather a dystopia where only the approved people of the state are allowed to be excellent, while people who do not go through hero courses or receive their licenses are forced to forever not be able to wield their superpowers in regular life. It's a superpowered libertarian's worst nightmare, but it's this kind of inequality that fuels the anger behind the members of the League of Villains and the Metal Liberation Army. The Metal Liberation Army is built around the ideology that ultimately true freedom is in allowing the people to wield their quirks without restrictions. And of course there are just plain old vigilantes. Alongside the My Hero Academia, there's a prequel spin-off titled My Hero Academia Vigilantes that follows the adventures of Koichi Hamiwari, a college student who didn't quite make the cut in the hero school entrance exam, but like Deku, he's also inspired by All Might, wishing to use his quirk for good. But without a license, he's just not as much at risk to be jailed as any villain. He is not an authorized professional, and despite his heroic intentions, ultimately he is spurned by the superhuman society because his altruistic actions are ultimately illegal. This stands in direct contrast to the superpowered world of the boys. In the boys, superpowered beings are not nearly as numerous as the world of My Hero. That's very much by design. Spoilers for the boys, but if you like the boys, you should probably know this already. In the world of the boys, the superhuman formula of Compound V was created by a German scientist, Friedrich Vought. But before his super soldiers could be deployed on the battlefield, Nazi Germany fell, but he brought the formula over to America, where he defected. He was given a pardon and allowed to establish Vought Industries and begin a superhuman's arms race. Making deals with prospective parents to give their newly born babies Compound V to give them superpowers and investing in miracle baby origin stories to sell them to the public. Most superheroes, or supes as they are known in the boys universe, are all property of Vought International, serving to a limited degree as public servants, but more importantly as tools for entertainment franchises by starring in fictionalized movies about their lives, as well as brand and marketing deals and being the spokesman at large events. They are creatures that are ultimately designed to be the engines of eternal profit to keep Vought running as the engine of perpetual capitalistic growth. But what I think the boys does very well is selling the casual horror of what living in a world where you can instantly be liquidated by being touched by the Superman, and how terrifying that is. But I'd say in that depicting the full ramifications of the superhuman society, it's really hard to believe that the US government would ultimately let a group of people with the powers to destroy a city run around without any kind of regulations or permits. The idea is that there's more collateral damage from superhero fallout than the public knows about, and Vought usually covers it up by having victims, friends, and family take a settlement check and sign an NDA. But seeing how often people see footage of Homelander lasering a mofo, you'd think that there'd be more of a call to regulate and contain all of the superpowered people powered by Vought. Also, why are all the powers of Compound B so random? If it's one fixed substance, it never really made sense why it gives such a grab bag of mutations instead of a consistent set of superpowers like the super soldier serum in the MCU. But these are minor CinemaSins quibbles of mine with the world building. Ultimately, the boys themselves are designed to be the government's method of keeping supes in line and under control. In the comic, they have powers, but in the show, only Kimiko is powered through the Compound V, but they are designed to be the underdogs fighting against the corruption and casualties of supe violence. But I still find it hard to believe that the US government would let a corporation turn its populace into living weapons without some kind of crackdown or regulation. It's a choice that serves the themes of the show, but one that makes its world building in terms of showcasing what the ramifications of living in a superhuman society a bit weaker than My Hero Academia's, where their superpowers are explicitly tracked and regulated for good reason, seeing how it's an issue of public safety. But being a hero is more than just about heroic feats and defeating criminals. Being a hero also means being in the public spotlight directly as a part of celebrity culture. These two series handle it in very different ways. In My Hero, one of the core factors of the hero society is the celebrity status that comes with being a hero. Of course, their endorsement deals, being a focal point of the press, and merchandising, so much merchandising. This creates a dark underpinning in the hero society that there's a monetary value to the cost of life. That ultimately heroism is just a commodity to be bought and sold. But what distinguishes the true public servants from the phonies who just want money and attention is how much blood and skin are you willing to sacrifice on someone else's behalf. This creates a darker undercurrent that separates the jobber heroes who just do it for the attention and money from heroes like All Might, is how much they are willing to mutilate themselves in the service of saving others. In fact, the hero killer Stain's entire motivation is to bring back a new age of heroes by killing all the heroes he deems unworthy and fake. His mere willpower and conviction are so overwhelming that he manages to bring about a new darker age by questioning the nature of commodified heroism. For some heroes, it's just enough to be a sexy pop idol. The notion that there should always be a great reward for hero work always casts a dark shadow on the realm of hero work, especially in a world where heroes are ranked due to their popularity. The world of The Boys is even darker, depicting a universe where most of the pro heroes working for Vought don't really care about their work. They just enjoy the constant adulation of celebrity worship. Everything is designed to boost their merch sales, create new branded tie-in deals, and ultimately keep the profits of their parent company coming in and growing perpetually. Despite most heroes in the Seven, the Justice League equivalent in the world of The Boys, being virtually immune to any small arms fire or conventional weapons, they ultimately are afraid of their celebrity status being stripped away and losing all of the wealth and privileges that come with it. Sure, the heroes of The Boys do hero work, but it is all just regulated publicity stunts rather than traditional police work. But this celebrity status is the one weakness they all share. Despite their superpowers and inflated ego, ultimately what keeps their status and wealth is their public perception, making blackmail the greatest kryptonite that the boys have to keep the soups in line, and the only thing that gives them pause from simply dismembering a regular human. The best example of this is the Deep, who despite his superhuman abilities, finds his life ruined once his sexual assault is brought to light to the public, and he spends the rest of the second season trying to find a way back to his former glory and to make amends, at least superficially. Even Homelander, the most powerful soup on the show, the only thing that gets him to step down is the video of his infamous plane incident. Their celebrity status isn't so much because they're making the world a better or safer place, but rather the act of crime fighting is more or less an elaborate, gory publicity stunt, whose only purpose is to eventually let Vought make even more money selling superheroes to become part of the armed forces and get a very lucrative military contract. But then again, this was something I always found fishy in The Boys' world building. If Compound V was brought over by Nazi scientists defecting over to the United States, you think the very first thing the United States government would do would be to build their own battalion of superpowered men and women to be used in armed conflicts around the globe. Every time we see Homelander used to resolve military engagements, he always seems to completely demolish any opposition. The idea that Frederick Vought was allowed to basically become the bastard son of Jeff Bezos and Walt Disney and essentially create superhuman weapons for use in movie franchises and branded sponsorships feels like a bit of a stretch. But who knows, maybe there's a story about why that is, and we'll see it covered in later seasons of The Boys. But ultimately, these superhuman societies are reflections of our own. My Hero, I'd say, is a bit more of an optimistic take in that it sees how the presence of the superhuman can bring about the best and worst in us. How it allows people to do greater good on a wider scale, but also presents new barriers of discrimination. In a world where one person can have an extra tail and another one can have ice and fire they shoot out of their palms, it's never going to be a fair world, and it's this inequality that drives people to the side of the League of Villains or the Metal Liberation Army. But ultimately, is that the greater good? The greater will to fight on others' behalves that usually saves the day and provides hope for a greater, more vibrant future? Even if the present is filled with chaos and doubt, there's always hope that heroes will be more than tools of corporate punishment and fight for a better tomorrow, becoming a great symbol, which is why the main hero that is used to introduce the series and inspire the main protagonist is referred to as the symbol of peace. The Boys takes a much more pessimistic view of the superhuman condition, that the introduction of the Superman ultimately brings about the worst in people. It makes them arrogant, uncaring, selfish, and greedy. When your body is immune to small arms fire, why should you tread lightly? There are a few heroic soups with good intentions, but even they can be crushed by a greater force than Homelander's laser vision. They can be crushed by the gears of the corporate machine, like how Queen Maeve's bisexuality forces her into a position of being the LGBTQ face of the company to peddle brave Maeve bars and have a forced lesbian hacker girlfriend in her movie spin-off. But underlying it all is a sense of arrogance and entitlement. Homelander comes to especially despise all of the regular non-powered people. He hates that he's at their beck and call and wishes that a new world order where only supes could reign could come to fruition. The series flirts with the idea of what happens when Homelander goes rogue. What does that mean for the world? The comic gives that answer, although it remains to be seen if the TV series is going to stay that course. If anything, The Boys is designed as a pitch-black comedy answer to the MCU and DCEU. One that filters the superhuman as not something that uplifts us, but rather brings about our worst qualities. Some overcome these human flaws like Starlight and Queen Maeve, but ultimately they are the exceptions, not the rule in The Boys universe. It is designed to be a pitch-black satire of our current love affair with superheroes and celebrity culture, updated from its original comic roots and filtered through the prism of social media and live streams, which is why the series has had so much success. I'm not here to say one is better than the other. The Boys' world building is designed to be a dark satire of our own superhero-obsessed culture, while My Hero is designed to be a shonen love letter to the great paragons of American comics, just filtered through the prism of Shonen Jump. Each series offering its own distinctive take on what it means to live in a world where the Superman is real. But I think the My Hero universe is a bit more fleshed out in terms of showcasing what a superhuman society looks like, how it leads to greater technological developments, but also greater danger. But then again, that's due to the fact that almost everyone has some kind of power in that universe. In The Boys, only a relative handful of people infused with Compound V do. And although there is a program to see if it's possible to give it to adults, generally most people don't have powers, so they're not as thoroughly regulated as the hero system in My Hero Academia, since supes are generally rarer, even if they're more dangerous than your average quirk user. But as the world gets more advanced and dreams of science fiction slowly manifest into tangible reality, these serve as interesting examples of problems a superhuman society might encounter. One other topic you could bring into the conversation is Robert Kirkman's recent Invincible animated series that premiered to great acclaim on Amazon. The reason I exclude it from this conversation is that Invincible isn't really about the superhuman society. It's Robert Kirkman's grand love letter to the genre itself, where instead of working within the constraints of writing for Marvel or DC, he just went out and created his own expansive universe that could include everything from the genre he loved: interdimensional aliens, galactic empires at war, mad science, ancient curses. Invincible is a little something I like to call kitchen sink world building, where it's not about finding something and doing it right, but rather getting all the things together and throwing them into a giant pot. So on one hand, you could say it deals with the same thing, but on the other hand, it's also on so many other broader things that it really isn't concerned with the daily in and outs of what it's like to live in a superhuman society. Other than the fact that it's also as terrifying as living in The Boys or the My Hero world, perhaps even worse. But ultimately, these two shows reflect two visions with different aspects that shows the best and worst of us if given a little too much power. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm sure I've got fans of both series in the comments, so let me know, what do you think handles the superhuman society? The Boys or My Hero Academia? Let me know. I would love to hear your thoughts. Hope you enjoyed this video about the two very different takes on the superhero genre. My Hero Month is still going strong, so sub, buy the t-shirts, draw some art so you can get into the art contest. Love what I'm seeing so far. Remember, send it to Twitter, Lobster Mag. There's a link down to my Twitter in the description, and there's a link on my YouTube page. Both of them will take you there. A special thank you to all the Compound V soups on my Patreon: Carla Hoffman, Eric Duhane, I'll1, Shonen Ronan, Bari, Walking the Steps, Joseph Malty, and Aaron Tony. Look forward to seeing all you guys in the comment section of the final video of My Hero Month 2021.